Welcome to Monk's Temple. Let's begin by simply arriving here. Right now. In this moment. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, just take one conscious breath. Feel the air enter your body. Feel it leave. That's it. That's all you need to do to be fully present. The world outside can wait. There's nowhere else you need to be. You're here, and that's enough. Now, let's talk about something that happens to every single one of us. Something that can take that peaceful breath and turn it into a knot in your stomach in an instant. Arguments. Conflicts. Those moments when someone says something, and suddenly you feel that flash of heat, that tightening in your chest, that urge to strike back, to defend yourself, to prove you're right. Maybe it's with your partner after a long day. Maybe it's with a coworker who crossed a line. Maybe it's with a family member who knows exactly which buttons to push. Maybe it's with a stranger on the internet whose words somehow have the power to ruin your whole afternoon. We've all been there. We all know that feeling. And if we're honest, most of us have a collection of regrets from arguments past. Things we said in anger. Things we wish we could take back. Wounds we caused that still haven't fully healed. What if I told you there's another way? What if an argument doesn't have to be a battlefield? What if it could be something else entirely? Not a war to be won, but a doorway. A doorway to deeper understanding. A doorway to genuine connection. A doorway to peace within yourself. This isn't about learning clever tricks to win debates. This is about something far more profound. This is about transforming how you relate to conflict at the deepest level of your being. For this, we have a guide. His name was Sariputta. He was the chief disciple of the Supreme Buddha, known as the General of the Dhamma, the Guardian of Truth. Among all the enlightened ones who gathered around the Buddha, Sariputta was renowned for his unshakable calm and his profound understanding of the human mind. The Buddha himself said Sariputta was second only to him in his ability to guide others toward peace. And Sariputta gave a teaching about arguments. A teaching so simple, so elegant, so psychologically powerful that it remains just as relevant today as it was 25 centuries ago. His teaching had two parts. Two simple instructions. Two pillars that can support you through any conflict you will ever face. Number 1, be cool. Stay cool. Number 2, speak the truth. That's it. That's the whole teaching. Be cool. Speak the truth. It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? It sounds like something your grandmother might have told you. And yet hidden within these simple words is a depth that can take a lifetime to fully understand. Because here's the thing. When someone accuses you, when someone attacks you with words, when someone blames you for something you did or something you didn't do, the very last thing you want to do is be cool. The very last thing you want to do is speak the truth. Every cell in your body, every instinct wired into your nervous system over millions of years of evolution, is screaming at you to do the opposite. Get hot. Get defensive. Strike back. Protect yourself. And if the truth doesn't serve that goal, well, a little lie never hurt anyone, right? This is why Sariputta's teaching is so radical. It goes against every grain of our conditioned nature. It asks us to do the very thing our survival instincts tell us not to do. And that's precisely why it works. That's precisely why it has the power to transform not just your arguments, but your entire life. Let's start with that first instruction. Be cool. Stay cool. What does it really mean to be cool in the middle of an argument? It doesn't mean being emotionless. It doesn't mean suppressing your feelings or pretending you're not hurt when you are. True coolness isn't about being a block of ice. It's about not being a pot of boiling water. It's about having the heat rise within you, feeling it fully, and yet not letting it boil over and scald everything around you. Psychologically, we know exactly what happens in those moments. Your amygdala, that tiny part of your brain that acts as your personal smoke detector, perceives a threat. Not a physical threat, but a threat to your ego, your self-image, your sense of being right. It screams danger and instantly hijacks your rational mind. It floods your body with stress hormones. Your heart races. Your muscles tense. You are now in fight mode. And in that state, you cannot think clearly. You cannot listen. You cannot respond with wisdom. You can only react. You become like a scribe trying to write on a surface of boiling oil. The Buddha used this image. He said when your mind is seized by anger, it's like writing on boiling oil. The moment the stylus touches the surface, the oil sizzles and spits, and the mark disappears. There is no clarity. No wisdom. Only chaos. Think of a time you said something in anger and instantly regretted it. Was that your wisest self speaking? Of course not. It was the boiling oil speaking. And those words, once spoken, cannot be unspoken. They create scars that take time to heal. So how do we stop being boiling oil? How do we become a cool, clear lake instead? That's what we'll explore together in the next part. If this resonates with you, if these reflections feel like a gentle hand reaching out to you in the darkness, please consider subscribing to Monk's Temple. It's a simple way to support this work and to ensure these teachings can continue to find their way to you. Just click subscribe. And now, let's continue. Thank you for continuing this journey with me. Let's take another breath together. Just one. Feel the air coming in. Feel it going out. In the middle of a busy life, this simple act of breathing is always here, always available, always bringing you back to yourself. In our last part, we began exploring the first pillar of Sariputta's teaching, be cool. Stay cool. We talked about how anger turns us into boiling oil, how it hijacks our rational mind, how it makes us say things we later regret. But knowing this and actually being able to stay cool when someone is accusing you, when someone is pushing your buttons, when someone is saying things that feel unfair and hurtful, those are two very different things. So let's go deeper. Let's understand what it actually takes to be cool in the heat of conflict. The first thing to understand is that staying cool is not something you can suddenly do in the moment if you haven't been practicing it all along. You cannot wait until you're in the middle of the ocean to learn how to swim. You have to practice in the shallow end first. You have to build the muscle of awareness long before the storm arrives. This is where mindfulness comes in. Mindfulness is just a fancy word for paying attention to your own experience. It's noticing what's happening inside you while it's happening. And the best place to practice this is not during a major argument, but in the small moments of your everyday life. Notice how you feel when someone cuts you off in traffic. Notice the tightness in your jaw when you're waiting in a long line. Notice the heat that rises when a colleague takes credit for your work. These are your training grounds. These are your shallow end moments. In each of these small irritations, you have an opportunity to practice being cool. Here's how you do it. When you feel that familiar flash of irritation, just pause. Don't do anything. Don't react. Don't speak. Don't send that email. Don't make that face. Just pause and notice what's happening in your body. Where do you feel the anger? Is it a heat in your chest? Is it a tension in your shoulders? Is it a clenching in your jaw? Just notice it. Give it your full attention without trying to make it go away. This simple act of noticing creates something incredibly valuable. It creates a tiny gap, a tiny sliver of space between the stimulus and your response. In that gap, you have a choice. You can choose to react automatically, the way you always have. Or you can choose something different. You can choose to simply breathe. You can choose to let the wave of anger rise and fall without surfing it all the way to the shore of regret. This is what Sariputta meant by being cool. Not never feeling anger, but not being controlled by it. Not letting anger be the boss of you. Let me tell you a story. There was once a woman named Elena who worked in a busy hospital. She was a nurse, dedicated and compassionate, but she had one weakness. She could not handle criticism. The moment a doctor or a supervisor pointed out a mistake, even gently, she would feel that flash of heat. Her face would turn red. Her voice would get sharp. She would immediately defend herself, explain why it wasn't really her fault, point out what everyone else had done wrong. One day, a patient's family member complained that Elena had been abrupt with them. Her supervisor called her in. Elena felt the familiar heat rising even before the supervisor spoke. But this time, something was different. The night before, she had listened to a talk about mindfulness. She had heard about that tiny gap between stimulus and response. And she decided to try something new. As her supervisor began speaking, Elena felt the heat. She felt her jaw tighten. She felt the urge to defend herself rising like a wave. But instead of speaking, she just noticed. She noticed the heat. She noticed the tightness. She noticed the urge. She took a breath. And in that breath, she created the gap. When her supervisor finished, Elena didn't explode. She didn't defend. She just sat there for a moment, cool and present. Then she said, "Thank you for telling me. I need to think about what you've said. Can we talk again in an hour?" Her supervisor was surprised. She had expected a fight. She had her arguments ready. But Elena had dissolved the battle before it began. In that hour, Elena reflected honestly. She realized that yes, she had been abrupt. She had been tired, overworked, and she had taken it out on that family. When she returned to her supervisor, she didn't make excuses. She simply said, "You were right. I was abrupt. I apologize, and I'll do better." That moment changed everything for Elena. Not because she never felt anger again. She did. But she had discovered that she didn't have to be a slave to it. She had discovered the power of the gap. This is the first secret of being cool. You don't fight the anger. You don't suppress it. You just make space for it. You let it be there without letting it drive. You become the sky, not the storm. The storm passes through the sky, but the sky is never damaged by it. The sky remains vast and open, no matter how hard the wind blows or how heavy the rain falls. Can you be that sky? Can you let the storms of accusation and criticism pass through you without leaving a mark? This is what Sariputta is inviting you to learn. This is the first pillar of winning an argument without hurting yourself or anyone else. But being cool is only half of the teaching. Once you've created that space, once you've paused and let the heat settle, what do you do next? What do you actually say? This brings us to the second pillar. Speak the truth. And that's what we'll explore together in the next part. Welcome back. Before we explore the second pillar, let's arrive together. Just one conscious breath. Feel the air moving in. Feel it moving out. This moment is yours. Nothing else needs your attention right now. In our last part, we explored the first pillar, be cool. We talked about creating that gap, that sliver of space between the accusation and your response. But creating space is only half the journey. Once you're cool, once you've paused, what do you actually do with that space? What do you say? This brings us to the second pillar. Speak the truth. Now, this sounds simple. Of course we should tell the truth. But in the middle of an argument, telling the truth is one of the hardest and most radical things you can do. Because the truth often makes us vulnerable. The truth often requires us to admit things we'd rather hide. Think about what happens in a typical argument. Someone accuses you of something. Maybe you did it. Maybe you didn't. But either way, your first instinct is rarely to tell the simple truth. Your first instinct is to protect yourself. If you made a mistake, you want to minimize it, explain it away, shift the blame. If you didn't make the mistake, you want to prove your innocence, defend your character, attack your accuser for being wrong about you. In both cases, the truth gets buried under a mountain of defense and counterattack. And once you start burying the truth, you have to keep burying it. One lie leads to another. One excuse requires another excuse to support it. You end up building an entire prison of your own making, all because you were afraid to simply speak the truth in that first moment. Sariputta understood this perfectly. He saw that lies are not escapes. They're traps. They might feel like a way out in the moment, but they're actually cages. The truth, on the other hand, is freedom. When you tell the truth, you don't have to remember what you said. You don't have to keep your story straight. You don't have to worry about being discovered. The truth just sits there, solid and simple, requiring no maintenance, no protection, no energy to sustain it. Let me tell you a story about a young woman named Priya. She worked at a small bookstore, her first real job, and she loved it. She loved the smell of the pages, the quiet customers, the feeling of being surrounded by stories. But Priya had a problem. She was terrified of making mistakes. One afternoon, she accidentally priced a stack of rare books incorrectly. Instead of $50 each, she marked them for $15. By the time she realized what she'd done, 3 had already been sold. Her manager, a kind but busy woman named Carol, called her over. Priya felt her stomach drop. Her heart pounded. Every instinct screamed at her to lie. The price gun was broken. Someone must have switched the stickers. I was just following what was written on the list. The lies lined up in her mind, ready to be deployed. But as she walked toward Carol, she remembered something her grandfather used to say. He was a simple man, a farmer, not educated in any formal way. But he had wisdom. He used to say, "A lie is like a hole you dig for yourself. The deeper it gets, the harder it is to climb out. But the truth, even when it hurts, is like solid ground. You can always stand on it." Priya took a breath. She felt the heat in her chest. She felt the fear. But she also felt something else. She felt the ground of her grandfather's words beneath her. When she reached Carol, she didn't lie. She spoke the truth. She said, "I made a mistake. I priced the rare books wrong and sold 3 of them for $15. I'm so sorry. I'll do whatever I can to fix it." Carol looked at her for a long moment. Priya braced herself for anger, for blame, for punishment. But instead, Carol's face softened. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "Mistakes happen. What matters is that you're honest about them. We'll figure out how to handle this together." In that moment, Priya learned something she never forgot. The truth hadn't destroyed her. It had protected her. It had earned her trust. It had turned a potential enemy into an ally. This is the power of speaking the truth in an argument. It doesn't mean you won't face consequences. Sometimes the truth has consequences. But the consequences of the truth are temporary. They pass. They can be worked through. The consequences of lies compound. They grow. They create more and more problems until you're buried under them. Think about the last time someone lied to you. How did it feel when you discovered the truth? Didn't it damage your trust in a way that was hard to repair? Now think about the last time someone told you a difficult truth with honesty and courage. Didn't you respect them more for it? This is the paradox of truth. In the short term, it can be uncomfortable. In the long term, it's the only thing that builds real trust. When you speak the truth in an argument, you're not just resolving that one conflict. You're building a foundation for every future interaction with that person. You're showing them who you really are. And when people know you'll tell them the truth even when it's hard, they trust you. They feel safe with you. But speaking the truth begins with being honest with yourself. How often do you lie to yourself in an argument? How often do you refuse to see your own contribution to the conflict? Speaking the truth begins in the mirror. In our next part, we'll bring these 2 pillars together and explore what happens when you combine being cool with speaking the truth. Let's take a breath together. Just one. Feel the air enter your body. Feel it leave. This simple act of breathing is always here, always bringing you back to center. We've explored the 2 pillars separately. Be cool. Speak the truth. But now we need to understand something essential. These 2 pillars don't stand alone. They support each other. They complete each other. You cannot truly speak the truth if you're boiling with anger, because your truth will be twisted by your rage. And if you're cool but you speak a lie, your coolness is just a mask. The 2 must go together. Coolness gives you the clarity to see the truth. Truth gives your coolness its power and purpose. When you combine these 2, something remarkable happens. You become unshakable. Not because you're rigid or defensive, but because you're grounded in something real. You're not trying to win. You're not trying to escape. You're simply being present and honest. And that presence, that honesty, has a power that no amount of clever argument can match. Let me tell you a story about a man named Carlos. Carlos was a bus driver in a large city. He'd been driving the same route for 12 years. He loved his job, loved the regular passengers who became like family. But there was one passenger who tested him every single day. An older woman named Mrs. Patterson. She complained about everything. The bus was too cold. The bus was too hot. He was driving too fast. He was driving too slow. Every day, something new. One morning, Carlos was already running late due to traffic. Mrs. Patterson got on and immediately began complaining that he'd missed her usual stop. She stood right behind his seat, her voice getting louder and louder, accusing him of being careless, of not caring about the elderly, of doing his job poorly on purpose. Other passengers were watching. Some looked uncomfortable. A few were smiling, enjoying the drama. Carlos felt the familiar heat rise. He felt his jaw tighten. He felt the urge to defend himself, to explain about the traffic, to point out that she'd been standing at a different spot this morning. The words were right there. But in that moment, he remembered something his father used to say. His father was a carpenter, a quiet man who rarely spoke. But he once told Carlos, "Son, when someone is shouting, they're not trying to reach you. They're trying to reach themselves. Don't get in the way." So instead of reacting, Carlos paused. He took a breath. He felt the heat, but he didn't let it drive him. He waited until Mrs. Patterson ran out of steam. Then, at the next red light, he turned slightly and spoke. His voice was calm, genuinely calm. He spoke the truth. He said, "Mrs. Patterson, I'm sorry you're upset. I missed your stop, and I understand why that's frustrating. I'll make sure to watch for you tomorrow." There was silence on the bus. Mrs. Patterson looked stunned. She'd been ready for a fight. She had her next complaint ready. But Carlos had agreed with her. He'd apologized. He hadn't defended or explained. She didn't know what to do. She sat down and said nothing. The next morning, Mrs. Patterson got on the bus at her usual stop. She didn't complain. She just nodded at Carlos. A small nod, but it was something. Over the following weeks, the complaints gradually stopped. She even said thank you once when she got off. Carlos had dissolved the conflict by refusing to engage in it. He'd been cool. He'd spoken the simple truth. And he'd won something more valuable than being right. He'd won a small piece of peace. Now, let's look at a more difficult scenario. What happens when the accusation is completely false? What if someone accuses you of something you absolutely did not do? This is the ultimate test. Your ego screams for justice. It wants to fight, to prove its innocence. How dare you accuse me? Let me show you the evidence. But let's think about it. If the accusation is false, if you're truly innocent, what do you have to defend? The truth is already on your side. It's your fortress. You don't need to build walls of argument around it. You can be cool. You can speak your truth simply, calmly, once. And then you can let go. You can say, "I understand that you believe that. But that's not what happened." You say it once. Maybe twice if you sense they genuinely didn't hear you. But you don't get drawn into trying to prove your innocence to someone who's determined to see you as guilty. Their belief is their belief. It's their burden to carry, not yours. This requires a deep sense of self-worth that isn't dependent on what others think. Someone else's opinion of you does not define you. The Buddha used an image. He said, imagine a beautiful, clear lake. If a person comes to the lake and sees a distorted reflection because their own mind is disturbed, is that the lake's fault? The lake just reflects. The distortion is in the seer, not the seen. When you're falsely accused and you remain cool and simply state the truth, you're being that lake. You're offering a clear reflection. If the other person's mind is too muddy to see it clearly, that's their journey, not yours. Your peace is found in your own integrity, in the coolness of your own heart, and the stillness of your own truth. Let's arrive together. Just one conscious breath. Feel the air moving in. Feel it moving out. Notice the space between the breaths, that tiny pause where everything is still. That stillness is always here, waiting for you. We've explored how to apply Sariputta's teaching to arguments with others. Be cool. Speak the truth. We've seen how this combination can transform conflicts with partners, co-workers, family members, even difficult strangers. But there's another arena where this teaching is just as powerful, maybe even more so. The arguments we have with ourselves. Yes, we have internal arguments all the time. The inner critic. The voice of doubt. The voice of fear. You're not good enough. You'll never succeed. That was a stupid thing to say. Why did you do that? What's wrong with you? We get into arguments with our own minds, and we lose, every single time. These internal arguments can be more damaging than any external conflict. Because there's no escape. You can't walk away from your own mind. The accuser and the accused are the same person. And the battle never ends unless you find a different way to relate to it. The Sariputta method works here too. When that inner voice attacks you with an accusation, you are a failure, the first tip is, be cool. Don't react. Don't believe the thought immediately. Just notice it. Ah, there is the thought, I am a failure. Notice the feeling it creates in your body. A heaviness in the chest. A sinking in the stomach. Just be cool with it. Don't start arguing back. Don't try to prove the thought wrong with a list of your accomplishments. That's just fighting fire with fire. And then, speak the truth. What is the truth about you? The truth is, you are a complex, ever-changing human being. You have succeeded at some things and failed at others. You have strengths and weaknesses. The thought, I am a failure, is not the truth. It's just a story. It's a label, and a very unhelpful one. The truth is simply, I am experiencing a thought of failure. Or, I made a mistake in that situation. That is a manageable truth. That is something you can work with. That is a truth that allows you to learn and grow, instead of being crushed by a global, negative label. Let me tell you a story about a woman named Sandra. Sandra was a musician, a pianist. She was classically trained, technically brilliant. But she suffered from terrible performance anxiety. Before every concert, her mind would fill with accusations. You're going to mess up. Everyone will see what a fraud you are. You don't belong on that stage. She would argue with these thoughts, try to push them away, tell herself she was good enough. But the more she argued, the louder the thoughts became. One day, before an important recital, Sandra was backstage, caught in her usual battle. Her teacher, an older woman who had been performing for decades, found her there, pale and shaking. The teacher sat down next to her and said, "What's happening in there?" Sandra told her about all the voices, all the accusations. Her teacher smiled gently. She said, "I've been performing for 40 years, and those voices still visit me before every concert. The difference is, I've stopped trying to throw them out. I just invite them to sit in the audience. They can think whatever they want. I'm still going to play." Sandra didn't fully understand then, but she remembered those words. She went on stage, and the voices were there. "You're going to mess up." But instead of fighting them, she just noticed them. She was cool with them. She played, and she didn't mess up. And something shifted. She realized the voices could be there without controlling her. They were just thoughts, not truths. This is the practice. When the inner critic speaks, you don't have to believe it. You don't have to argue with it. You can just notice it. You can be the sky, and let the accusing thoughts be clouds that pass through. They come. They go. And you remain. There's another internal argument that's common. The argument about the past. I shouldn't have said that. I should have done this differently. If only I could go back and change things. We replay conversations, rehearse better responses, punish ourselves for mistakes long gone. The Sariputta method applies here too. Be cool with the memory. Notice the regret without drowning in it. And speak the truth. The truth is, the past is gone. It cannot be changed. The only moment you can actually do anything in is this one, right now. The truth is, you did the best you could with what you knew at the time. The truth is, you can learn from the mistake without living in it forever. And then there's the internal argument about the future. What if this happens? What if that goes wrong? What if I can't handle it? Anxiety is just an argument with a future that hasn't happened yet. Be cool with the worry. Notice it. Don't let it boil over. And speak the truth. The truth is, you don't know what will happen. The truth is, you've survived every difficult thing that's ever happened to you so far. The truth is, right now, in this moment, you're okay. When you learn to apply this teaching internally, something beautiful happens. The arguments with others become easier too. Because you're no longer fighting yourself. You're no longer projecting your own inner critic onto other people. You're more grounded, more present, more real. Let's take a breath together. Just one. Feel the air fill your lungs. Feel the gentle release. This moment is yours. Nothing else needs your attention right now. We've explored how Sariputta's teaching applies to arguments with others and arguments with ourselves. But there's a whole new arena of conflict that has emerged in our modern world, something the great sage could never have imagined. I'm talking about digital arguments. Text messages. Emails. Social media comments. Online exchanges where words on a screen somehow have the power to ruin our entire day. Have you ever received a text that made your blood boil? A few words, maybe a misunderstood tone, and suddenly your heart is pounding. You read it again, and each time you find a new layer of insult hidden in it. You start crafting a response in your mind, a masterpiece of witty, cutting prose that will put them in their place. Your fingers itch to type it out and hit send. This is a perfect training ground for the Sariputta method. In fact, digital communication gives us an advantage we don't have in person. We have time. We don't have to respond instantly. We can actually practice being cool before we speak our truth. The first thing to do when you receive a message that triggers you is to put the device down. Literally put it in another room. Walk away from the computer. Feel the heat in your body. Notice the stories your mind is creating. How dare they say that to me? They have no right. Just notice. Let the boiling water settle. This might take 5 minutes. It might take an hour. It might take a whole day. There's no rush. Only when you feel that the water has become still, only when you're no longer writing angry responses in your head, only then do you pick up the device again. And now you're ready to speak the truth. But the truth in this context isn't about winning. It's about clarifying. It's about connection. Let me tell you a story about a young man named Kevin. Kevin was in a band with his best friend, Derek. They'd been making music together since high school. One evening, Kevin got a long text from Derek. It was full of frustration. Derek felt Kevin wasn't pulling his weight. He wasn't practicing enough. He wasn't promoting their shows. He was letting the band down. The text ended with, "Maybe you don't care about this as much as I do." Kevin read it once. His face got hot. He read it again. Now he was angry. Who was Derek to talk about pulling weight? Derek was always late to practice. Derek never helped load the equipment. The accusations were completely unfair. Kevin started typing a response immediately. "Are you kidding me? You're the one who's always late. You never help with gear. Don't talk to me about caring." His thumb hovered over send. But something stopped him. A tiny voice, maybe the voice of wisdom, whispered, "Not yet." Kevin put the phone down. He went for a walk. He was angry the whole time, but he just let himself be angry. He noticed the heat. He noticed the stories his mind was telling. He's so ungrateful. I've done so much for this band. By the time he got back from his walk, the heat had settled. He could think more clearly. He picked up the phone and read Derek's message again. This time, he noticed something he'd missed before. Underneath the frustration, there was fear. Derek was afraid the band was falling apart. He was reaching out, clumsily, but reaching out nonetheless. Kevin took a breath. He was cool now. And he spoke his truth. But his truth wasn't an attack. He typed, "Hey, I read your message. I admit my first reaction was defensive, and I almost sent you an angry reply. But I took some time to really hear what you're saying. I hear that you're frustrated, and I hear that you're worried about the band. I care about this too, more than you know. Can we talk in person tomorrow?" I want to understand better what you need from me. Derek replied almost immediately. Thanks, man. That means a lot. Yeah, let's talk. The next day, they met for coffee and had one of the best conversations they'd ever had. They cleared up misunderstandings. They made a plan. The band got stronger. This is the power of applying the Sariputta method to digital communication. The delay that used to be a disadvantage, the lack of immediate face-to-face contact, becomes your greatest tool. You have time to let the heat settle. You have time to find your truth. You have time to respond wisely instead of reacting blindly. Now, what about those online arguments with strangers? The comment sections. The social media debates. Someone says something ignorant or offensive, and you feel the urge to correct them, to educate them, to put them in their place. Can the Sariputta method apply here too? Yes, but maybe not in the way you think. Sometimes speaking the truth means recognizing that some arguments don't need to be entered at all. Sometimes being cool means scrolling past. Sometimes the truth is, this person is not ready to hear what I have to say, and engaging will only create more heat and less light. This doesn't mean you never speak up. It means you choose your battles wisely. You speak your truth when it can actually land, when there's someone willing to listen. You don't throw your pearls where they'll only be trampled. In digital arguments, the stakes are often lower than they feel. The person on the other side is a stranger. They don't know you. Their opinion doesn't define you. You can be cool. You can let it go. And that letting go is itself a form of speaking the truth. The truth that your peace is more valuable than being right in front of someone who will never appreciate it. Let's arrive together. Just one conscious breath. Feel the air moving in. Feel it moving out. Notice how each breath is fresh, new, unburdened by the breath that came before. This is always possible. A fresh start, right here, right now. We've explored this teaching in many contexts. With strangers. With coworkers. With ourselves. With people on screens. But now we come to the most challenging arena of all. The people we love most. Our partners. Our parents. Our children. Our dearest friends. The arguments that hurt the most are always with the people closest to us. Because the stakes are higher. Because we have history. Because we have expectations. Because we have love, and love means we can be hurt more deeply than any stranger could ever hurt us. When someone you love accuses you, when someone you love is angry with you, it cuts in a way that nothing else cuts. The heat rises faster. The defenses go up higher. The fear is greater. Fear of losing them. Fear of damaging something precious. Fear that this argument might be the one that breaks what you've built together. This is precisely where Sariputta's teaching is most needed. And this is precisely where it's hardest to apply. Let me tell you a story about a couple named Maria and Elena. They'd been together for 8 years. They had a good relationship, solid, loving. But like any couple, they had their patterns. Their pattern was this. When Maria felt stressed, she would become critical. Small things would bother her. The way Elena left dishes in the sink. The way Elena forgot to lock the door. And when Maria became critical, Elena would become defensive. She would explain, justify, push back. And the criticism would escalate. And the defensiveness would escalate. And soon they'd be in a full argument about nothing, really, except that they were both hurt and neither felt heard. One evening, it happened again. Maria came home exhausted from work. She saw Elena's shoes by the door, right where she always left them despite being asked 100 times to put them away. Maria felt the irritation rise. She said, "Really, Elena? The shoes again? How many times do I have to ask?" Elena felt the familiar heat. The defensiveness rose instantly. "I just got home 2 minutes ago. I was going to put them away. You don't have to attack me the second I walk in the door." And they were off. The argument escalated. Old grievances surfaced. Voices rose. By the time they went to bed, they weren't speaking. They lay back to back in the same bed, miles apart. The next morning, Elena woke up early. She lay there in the quiet, watching Maria sleep. She felt the residue of the argument, the heaviness in her chest. And she remembered something a friend had told her recently about this teaching. Be cool. Speak the truth. She got up, made coffee, and sat with herself for a while. She felt her own defensiveness. She felt her own hurt. She let it be there without pushing it away. Then she thought about Maria. Not the Maria from last night, the critical one, but the Maria she loved. The Maria who worked too hard and worried too much. The Maria who left love notes in her lunch bag. The Maria who held her when she was sad. When Maria woke up and came into the kitchen, Elena didn't start with the argument. She was cool. She said, "Good morning. I made coffee." Maria nodded, guarded, still holding the fight. Elena took a breath. Then she spoke her truth. Not the truth of who was right and who was wrong. A deeper truth. She said, "I hate it when we fight. I hate going to sleep angry. I'm sorry about the shoes. I know it frustrates you, and I'll try harder to remember. But more than that, I'm sorry we ended up there. I love you, and I don't want us to be enemies." Maria's eyes filled with tears. Her defenses crumbled. She sat down and said, "I'm sorry too. I was stressed about work and I took it out on you. That's not fair. I love you." They sat together, drinking coffee, not needing to say much more. The argument was gone. What remained was love, stronger for having been tested. This is what happens when you bring coolness and truth to the people you love. You create a space where love can survive conflict. You show them that the relationship matters more than being right. You show them that you're willing to be vulnerable, to admit fault, to see them clearly. But what about when the fault isn't yours? What about when your loved one has genuinely wronged you, and you're the one who's hurt? The teaching still applies. Be cool. Feel your hurt without letting it become rage. And speak your truth. Not to punish, but to be known. I'm hurt. This is why. I need you to understand. The people we love deserve our truth. They also deserve our coolness, our ability to bring them our pain without dumping our anger on top of it. This is the path of real intimacy. This is how arguments become doorways instead of walls. In our next part, we'll explore how to handle the aftermath of an argument, what to do when the conflict is over but the residue remains. Welcome back. Let's take a breath together. Just one. Feel the air fill your lungs. Feel the gentle release. Notice how each breath is a new beginning. The last breath is gone. This one is fresh. This is always possible. We've explored how to be in an argument, how to stay cool, how to speak the truth. But what happens after the argument? The words have been spoken. The heat has subsided. The other person has walked away, or you have. And you're left with the residue. The lingering tension. The unfinished feeling. The question, what now? The aftermath of an argument is just as important as the argument itself. Sometimes more important. Because how you handle what comes after determines whether the conflict becomes a wound that festers or a lesson that heals. Sariputta's teaching doesn't end when the argument ends. The same two principles apply. Be cool. Speak the truth. But now they apply in a different way. After an argument, being cool means not replaying the conflict over and over in your mind. It means not feeding the story of how wrong they were and how right you were. It means letting the water settle, truly settle, so you can see clearly. Because in the aftermath, you have an opportunity. You can learn something. About yourself. About the other person. About the pattern that led to the conflict. But you can only learn if you're cool. If you're still boiling inside, still rehearsing your next move, still planning how you'll win the next round, you'll learn nothing. You'll just repeat the same pattern next time. Let me tell you a story about a man named Robert. Robert was a lawyer, good at his job, good at winning arguments. But at home, his winning wasn't working. His teenage son, Liam, had stopped talking to him. Their last argument, about Liam's grades, had ended with Liam slamming his door and refusing to come out. That was 3 days ago. Robert told himself he was right. Liam needed to focus on school. Liam needed to respect his father. Robert had all the arguments on his side. But as the days passed, Robert noticed something. He didn't feel good about being right. He felt terrible. He missed his son. He missed their Friday night pizza and movie tradition. He missed Liam's laugh. On the third night, Robert sat alone in his living room. He was cool now. The heat of the argument had long since faded. And in that coolness, he could see more clearly. He saw that being right hadn't brought him closer to his son. It had pushed them apart. He saw that beneath his lectures about grades, what he really wanted was for Liam to have a good life, to be happy, to not struggle the way Robert had struggled. That was the truth. That was what lived underneath all the arguments. The next morning, Robert knocked on Liam's door. No response. He spoke through the door, calmly, truthfully. He said, "Liam, I'm not here to argue. I'm here to say I'm sorry. Not about the grades, not about the importance of school. I still believe in that. But I'm sorry for how I said it. I'm sorry I made you feel like your best isn't good enough. The truth is, I just want you to be okay. I love you, and I miss you. When you're ready, I'm here. 20 minutes later, the door opened. Liam stood there, red-eyed. He said, "I'm not perfect, Dad. I'm trying." Robert hugged him. They didn't solve everything in that moment. But the door was open again. Literally and figuratively. This is the power of the aftermath. It's where repair happens. It's where you can speak truths that were too hard to speak in the heat of the moment. Truths like, "I was afraid. I was hurt. I didn't know how to say this without attacking you. I love you more than I love being right." After an argument, speaking the truth means being willing to be the first one to reach out. It means being willing to apologize, not because you were entirely wrong, but because the relationship matters more than your pride. It means being willing to hear the other person's truth too, to really listen, without defending, without preparing your response while they're still speaking. Sometimes the aftermath requires giving space. Sometimes the other person needs time to cool down themselves. You can't force someone to be ready to talk. But you can let them know, calmly, truthfully, that you're here when they are. You can leave the door open without trying to push them through it. And sometimes the aftermath requires forgiving yourself. How many arguments have you replayed in your mind, punishing yourself for what you said, for how you acted? That's not being cool. That's boiling in regret. Be cool with yourself. You're human. You made mistakes. Learn from them, and then let them go. Speak the truth to yourself, "I did the best I could in that moment. Next time, I'll do better." There's a beautiful teaching from the Buddha about this. He said that holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. The aftermath is where you finally open your hand and let the coal drop. Not for them. For you. When you let go of the residue of an argument, when you stop reheating old conflicts, you free up so much energy. Energy that can go into love, into creativity, into simply enjoying your life. The argument becomes a thing of the past, not a permanent resident in your mind. In our final part, we'll bring everything together and explore how to make these two simple instructions, be cool, speak the truth, a living practice in your everyday life. Welcome back. Let's take one final breath together. Just one. Feel the air fill your lungs. Feel the gentle release. Notice the stillness that remains. That stillness is your home. You can always return here. We've traveled far together. We've explored the two simple instructions from the great Sariputta. Be cool. Speak the truth. We've seen how they apply to strangers, to loved ones, to ourselves, even to digital arguments. But now comes the most important part. How do you actually live this? The answer is practice. Small, daily practice. You don't learn to be cool in the middle of a massive argument. You learn in the small moments. The driver who cuts you off. The barista who gets your order wrong. The colleague who interrupts you. These are your training grounds. In each small moment, you can feel the heat rise, and instead of reacting, you can just notice. You can create that tiny gap. You can choose something different. And you can practice speaking the truth in small ways too. When someone asks how you are and you're not fine, you can say, "I've been better, but I'm okay." That's a small truth. When you make a mistake, you can say, "I'm sorry, that was my fault." These small truths build the muscle for the bigger ones. Let me leave you with one final story. A woman once visited a wise teacher. She was frustrated with her practice. She said, "I keep trying to follow your teachings, but I keep failing. I get angry. I say things I regret. Maybe I'm not cut out for this path." The teacher pointed to a river flowing nearby. He said, "Do you see that river? It doesn't try to flow. It just flows. When rocks block its path, it goes around them. When the land is steep, it falls freely. When the land is flat, it moves slowly. It never argues with the landscape. It just keeps flowing toward the ocean." He continued, "You don't need to be perfect. You just need to keep flowing. When you get angry, notice it, and keep flowing. When you make mistakes, notice them, and keep flowing back to the truth. Don't let one moment of heat convince you that you're a boiling pot forever. You're the river. Keep flowing. This is the practice. Not perfection. Progression. Not never getting angry, but learning to be with your anger without being controlled by it. Not never making mistakes, but learning to speak the truth about them and keep moving. So take these 2 simple instructions into your life. Be cool. Speak the truth. Let them be your compass pointing home. And when you forget, because you will forget, be cool about that too. Just notice, and come back. The river keeps flowing. You can too. Thank you for walking this path with me in Monk's Temple. If these teachings have touched you, please share them with someone who needs them. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing so we can continue this journey together. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you navigate all your conversations with the cool clarity of a river and the unwavering truth of still water. Go in peace.